One of the things I wanted to ask you, because you know, I'm really into diet and health issues and nutrition and stuff. And obviously you mentioned earlier that you had quite a few autoimmune issues before.
Hell of a lot, actually.
Did you manage to sort them, and kind of how did you address that?
I still have them. I still have them to this day. I have to manage them.
Yeah.
Looking back, I had them from the age of 23, just subtly. Little indications, little symptoms here or there. But they come on strong when I was about 28. And the space of autoimmunity, you know, you look at the 4 horsemen that kill people, you know, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. Those are the 4 key horsemen that kill people or that cause a major loss in quality of life. They affect a lot of people. But if you combine all the autoimmune issues out there, that dwarfs all of those with respect to how much that impacts people, like death rates and quality of life. There's so many. And for me, when I talk to people that have autoimmune issues, one of the key patterns that I see is that they typically occur in response to one major bout of stress. And not just stress, I'm talking about unnecessary suffering here, or a number of smaller substantial periods of stress. Not like an acute stressor whereby you get into a fight in a night out, or maybe there's a bit of, I don't know, you have a tear up with your partner. I'm talking about you're being bullied in the workplace for a substantial period of time. Your mother and father are alcoholics and you have to live through that. You are dealing with neighbour issues for 3, 4, 5 years, you know, stuff like that. And then some. So for me, I had all these autoimmune issues and the doctors couldn't diagnose them. They were like arthromyalgia, fibromyalgia, Raynaud's, all these different things. So there was a lot of arthritic pain and a lot of gastrointestinal issues. I mean, if I could show you pictures right now, I was getting like my right knee, my right leg would be fully red, and my white leg, not that I have a black and a white leg, my left leg would be white, normal. This hand would be completely swollen, and you'd be able to, there'd be a noticeable distinctive red line, an inflammatory line. I was having and it was horrible to the point where it really impacted my psychology too, because when you're dealing with chronic pain, it messes with you. And it came to a real head when I just couldn't figure out what was going on. I was eating this, I was eating that. The only time I felt healthy was when I wasn't eating. So this is when I started to explore fasting, because I found that when I wasn't eating, I felt good. I felt really good. But then when I started to eat again, there was problems occurring. So then I put 2 and 2 together. It has to be something to do with my diet. And that was the first realization. And again, I realized that the doctors weren't going to help me, so I had to do my own work. And they helped a bit. That's not to, you know, to say that they didn't help. There was some small blood tests and so on and so forth, but it just wasn't moving at the pace that I wanted it to be moving at. Anyway, when I knew I had to make a big change in my life, I had to really work on myself from a nutritional perspective, was my partner and I, Faye, we were driving up to Skye. It's a lengthy drive. And we were about an hour into the drive, and I was getting major pains in my toes and my feet. I would get a lot of pains in my hands and my feet, like arthritic pains. You know, you're talking swelling, itchiness, tingles, nerve pain. And you know what it's like when you get nerve pain in your body? That is painful, you know, to the point where like painkillers wouldn't even do anything, wouldn't even touch it. And I couldn't even put my foot down on the clutch. And she's enjoying the ride up to Skye. She's, you know, it's beautiful. And I'm inside trying my best not to tear up. And then just the pain. I'd been carrying this weight for so long. I hadn't really expressed to anyone. I was dealing with these issues for about 2 years, and they were just getting worse and worse, more intense. And I was carrying that pain internally. And she turned round. She's all smiley, happy clappy. And I just burst out crying when we were driving. I had to pull over. And then I told her about all these things that were going on. She drove the car, and we had a conversation that weekend. And when I come back, I started removing like gluten from my diet, and then grains, and then nightshades, and just, and slowly but surely, you know, I was making the connection between habit and how I was feeling. That was a slow process, because it's hard to go from eating I wasn't even eating a standard Western diet. I was eating like probably a traditional bodybuilder's diet, you know,
Yeah.
I remember I was eating like these mutant mass gainer shakes. You know, Rich Piana, can you remember him? He passed away. You know, he was on all sorts.
Yeah.
It was like 1,300 calories a shake. So I was on that, and I was eating, God knows, 10 chickens a day and tuna, and very unhealthy, and loaf, you know, half a loaf of bread, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't good. But then I moved to a more, what you would call, people would probably, the average person would call a fairly healthy diet. You know, there's some vegetables in, there's protein, there's some fats, but still gluten and grains and nightshades. And it was just a slow process.
Of elimination.
Of elimination.
Yeah.
But what I also noticed was that whenever I had a significant bout of stress, and again, I'm talking a significant bout of stress, because I've had my fair share, later on in life also, there was a point where I moved back in with my mum, and my mum had a psychological breakdown. She was, you know, borderline. She was wanting to end her life. She had married an ex-SAS soldier who had PTSD issues and alcohol issues. There was abuse. She just exited that relationship. I thought she was fairly okay. I moved back in because I was starting my business. This is very long story short. And she became quite abusive toward me. And again, we're in a much different space now. And she was told that she had stage 3 colon cancer. There was a lot of stuff going on there, and I was on my own with her and trying to build this business, and I didn't know what I was coming into, and I would come into abuse, or a woman who was laying in her bed for 2 or 3 days in a low abusing Valium. And there was a lot of stress there. When I experienced that, the autoimmune issues got worse.